De'Aaron Fox is back, and the Kings go into Chicago and win their seventh game in a row. And for me, this was a super impressive game, not because the Kings played some perfect basketball like they did against Boston to go into Boston and beat Boston just a game ago, but it was the fact that they come away with the win when they didn't play perfectly and they didn't play all that well at all. And you have the Bulls shooting almost 50% from three and the Kings shooting 33% from three. The defense for the Kings throughout most of this game was not very good, but they were able to step up when it mattered and win this game. And that has been one of the biggest problems with the Kings this season. Before this 7 game win streak, they had the 6 game losing streak, and that was just them playing all around horrible basketball. But before that 6 game losing streak, the Kings' main problem was just not being able to close games. And so it's not like they played all that differently in this one than they did before. It was pretty similar, but the difference is you close the game, you kind of coast along all game, you don't play perfectly, but then the defense showed up when it mattered. And it's just funny because there are so many things that like Mike Brown preached. Nothing's really changed in terms of the message under Doug Christie, but it's just that the guys are bought in. And, Mike Brown always said that our problems in the clutch came down to the defense. And we saw the Kings actually be able to play defense late in this game, and that was the difference. And so Doug Christie has just been able to get these guys to buy in because this is the NBA. And would I have liked the Kings to play better defense the rest of the game? Would I have liked the Kings to be able to build a double-digit lead? Of course. But that's not the NBA. And if the Kings had lost this game and were in the middle of a losing streak, then, I would have been very mad at this type of loss. But that's the thing. The NBA is a results-driven league. And if you come away with the win, it doesn't really matter what you did the rest of the game. And so that's just the difference between where the Kings are at right now and where they were earlier this season. If the Kings had played this type of game earlier in the season, they probably would have lost it. And it would have been an incredibly frustrating loss. But when you win games, you kind of earn the right to coast through games. And that's going to happen in an 82 game regular season, and every team does it, but the truly great teams are able to like constantly coast through games and build leads, and even when they're coasting, they build really big leads. But then even the good teams are able to kind of coast through some games, and then if they are better, show it in the very end. And so now the Kings can be put under the category of a good team because they're above 500. It feels like it's been a while, but we got to remember where we came from. Just a few years ago, every Kings fan would have been ecstatic to be above 500 39 games into the season. If you would have told me before this season that the Kings are 20-19, I would have been like, that's not great. But the way that it's come about, the way they've won 7 in a row, it feels amazing to be 20-19 right now. But let's jump in to the breakdown of this game. And in the first quarter, it kind of set the tone for the game. There just wasn't going to be a lot of defense from either team. The Bulls are not a good defensive team. And the Kings came in and they inserted De'Aaron Fox into the starting lineup in his first game back here. And they did it for Keon Ellis. And, I understand why they did that. And I thought that would be the case. But I'm still not the biggest fan of this starting lineup, which I've expressed many times. And that kind of came to fruition early on where, yes, the offense was getting easy looks at the basket. The Kings were cutting super well. Sabonis was getting so many assists, just finding back cutters and screening in the middle of the floor. And Malik Monk was just coming off them and getting easy looks at the rim. So the offense was flowing. But then on the defensive end, we just didn't see that same energy that we've seen lately, and that we especially saw against Boston, where guys are flying around, running the opponent off the three-point line, but then also recovering and rotating. We didn't see that. We might have seen the initial run the guy off the three-point line, but then either the help was disorganized or the rotations just weren't quite there to get to the next three-point shooter. And the Kings ran a few different coverages, especially against Zach LaVine. And so they started out having Sabonis blitz LaVine with Keegan, of course, trailing. And Sabonis was staying up, but then he didn't quite totally contain Levine a lot of the times. But it wasn't just on him, it's also Keegan wasn't getting over that screen and like trapping Levine. And that let Levine be able to move the ball. And then from there, the Bulls were just kind of picking the Kings defense apart with an advantage scenario. They were especially getting the ball into Vucevic, and he was making good plays, good decisions, whether that was passing to another shooter or just going up at the rim. And so we just kind of had Domas up on Levine, trying to track him around the perimeter, and then Keegan just kind of sitting behind him. And so either Domas has to like recover all the way back to the paint and Keegan's there, or Keegan just has to drop down into the paint and switch. And so this was kind of the big dilemma the entire game for the Kings, trying to guard Zach LaVine. And Zach LaVine, he's been on an absolute heater, and he continued here and went 12 for 24 from the field, 5 for 8 from 3, 7 for 7 from the free throw line for 36 points. I mean, the Kings just couldn't guard him. And so that's one of the reasons why I would love to have Keon in the starting lineup. But then even when Keon came into the game, the Kings they weren't getting set defensively all the time, and you had Josh Giddey just dribbling down the court right by guys. And Keon came in, and he didn't get set defensively, and Josh Giddey blew by him. So it's not all on just the lineup decision from Doug Christie. It's on the guys to be able to give that effort defensively, which we saw against Boston. And like I said, you're going to have some of these games, but this was just what was happening. But the Kings were able to keep up offensively. Malik Monk in that first quarter was just relentlessly attacking the rim, utilizing Sabonis's screens. The cutting was so good. Herter came into the game, and he was making some very nice cuts, and Sabonis was finding him, and Herter was finishing around the rim. Keon taking a late shot clock step back mid-ranger that he nailed. He also passed up a 3 on that possession. It's like, realistically, you probably just want him taking the 3. But hey, if you're going to make that step back too, I'm not going to be too mad at that. And he's been showing his ability to get into the mid-range and make things happen. And one thing I will say, when Keon came in the game, they tried to blitz again. And this time, Keon, unlike what Keegan was doing, he fought through the screen and he was up. And Domas did a better job of containing, and they actually trapped Levine on the sideline and at half court. And so that forced a Chicago timeout. So it definitely wasn't all bad. They made that play, but I think, overall the defense had more bad than good in this game. Again, other than like the ending and in clutch time, but we'll get there. Also in Fox's, first game back, he just had a quiet beginning. Just didn't look quite up to the pace in the first quarter, and he took a contested corner 3, and he took a contested above the break 3 early in the offense. So there was just like him settling a little bit. Monk also settled in that second quarter, especially for some bad shots. But it felt like Fox just wasn't quite in it in that first quarter and start of the second yet. But I love the way Devin Carter came in. He immediately drove to the rim and got to the free throw line. And then Lyles came in, and he was also driving to the rim and contesting a lot of rebounds. And the Kings had a really nice play at the end of the half where DeMar drives, he kicks it to Lyles, Lyles drives, he kicks it to Keegan for 3. So the Kings ended the first quarter up 2 because of their elite offense. And this was just one of those games where the Bulls offered no resistance inside. So especially with Sabonis on the court, they could just run pick and roll all day, and eventually they would get something on a possession. And so that's why I really disliked Fox settling for some early shot clock 3s early on that were contested. Monk had 3 pretty bad shot attempts in a row in that second quarter. And, the reason I really didn't like these shot attempts were just because you're playing the Bulls. And I think one of the Kings' superpowers, especially against a bad defense like the Bulls, is just when you keep going through action after action and swinging the ball, eventually you're going to come into a good shot. And when they did continue to run the offense and even run it late into the shot clock, I was totally fine with them running late into the shot clock as long as they just kept attacking and kept recycling the possession. And there were many great moments of that. And I think those great moments made the settling more annoying because you know that the Kings offense can be better. But obviously it wasn't the offense that was the issue. But I think it could have been even better. But then Fox kind of got into the game a little bit. He attacked from the corner, got his own miss, got a layup. He was able to knock down a three off a really, really nice ball movement from the Kings. And those are the types of threes, catch and shoot, with no one around him, that you like to see him take. And in a game where he goes 4 for 8 from three, I would say he probably had 5 good looks out of the 8 attempts. And he made 4 of those 5 good looks. And so he went 0 for 3 on the looks that I kind of deemed either rushed or contested. And so with him, I always like when he gets 1 or 2 catch and shoot threes to go down first, and then he can kind of get into his pull-up 3 bag. And that's kind of what he did in this game after those few early misses. Then once he knocked down those catch and shoot threes, then he started to hit some pull-ups. I also liked he was getting rebounds and then just immediately pushing. He had 9 rebounds in this game, 4 offensive, 5 defensive, and he was pushing the pace in transition. The Kings' transition game wasn't all that great just because they were allowing a lot of Bulls baskets, not forcing turnovers. So that's always going to hurt your ability to run. But I think when they did have the opportunity, they did a pretty good job, especially Sabonis and his outlet passes and pushing the break. And he was especially pushing the break with his own dribble in the first quarter. But then Fox kind of took over in the second quarter with pushing the fast break. Defensively in that second quarter, guys were just getting beat off the dribble. You had Sabonis getting beat off the dribble by Jalen Smith. I think Lyles did as well at one point. I also thought the Kings did a poor job of stepping up to three-point shooters in transition, specifically Zach LaVine and Lonzo Ball throughout this game. And I actually thought this was one of Keon Ellis's poorer defensive games, like for his standards, because he absolutely made some plays, especially down the stretch. But I just thought there were a lot of moments where he wasn't like totally pressed up on a guy and he was allowing some shots and missing some rotations. So even he, in this game, the guy who he, is usually so consistent defensively, even he had a bit of a down game for his standards defensively, I thought. But I did think the Kings were better when Keon was guarding Zach LaVine rather than Keegan. I think Keegan's better in isolation against LaVine, but I think when that screen was coming, Keon's better with his screen navigation around it. That helped when Sabonis was blitzing or just showing and recovering. There were just too many times in the first 3 quarters of this game where Sabonis was left on an island on the perimeter and he was the one chasing guys off the 3-point line. So I think he got left out to dry a little bit defensively by other players' rotations not being there and energy not completely being there. But it was kind of interesting because then once clutch time came, you could see kind of what it was supposed to look like. And in those moments, you didn't have Sabonis getting isolated and you didn't have him being the guy way out on the perimeter having to guard these players. And there were just moments where our guards were getting beat too easily off the dribble. Josh Giddey doing his dumb just dribble down the lane. I feel like it's a classic kind of joke where you just have Josh Giddey doing a simple dribble down the lane and getting open. But the one thing I will say is the Bulls were kind of as advertised, missing a lot at the rim. Giddey was missing at the rim. LaVine missed late. But that's really why it was important for the Kings to be able to force guys off the 3-point line and force them to finish inside. And so the perimeter defense was getting scorched. The rotations weren't there. The energy defensively wasn't quite there. And yet the Kings were only down 2 at halftime. And it's just because the offensive floor for this team should be so high. And we've seen it not be that way a few times this season. We've seen the offense struggle at times, but the floor should be so high that even with, some bad shot selection, they still dominated because they could just get easy looks inside. And especially around Sabonis screens, and the chemistry between Malik Monk and Domantas Sabonis is just so good. There was a play where the Kings pushed the pace. Monk got it on the wing against Vooch. Sabonis was running the floor down the middle and he just stops kind of in the middle of the key, seals off his defender, and Monk sees this because this is what they do so much. When Monk sees Sabonis running the floor and get down into the paint, Monk just immediately drives. And Sabonis sealed his defender off, also screening Vooch out of the way, and Monk gets an easy layup at the rim. And there were A lot of moments where Sabonis' screening inside just generated wide open layups, especially for Monk and also DeRozan. You also had Keegan knocking down a couple threes, which was really nice because we needed him to do that. Trey Lyles was having a rough one. He went 0 for 6 from 3. I can't remember the sixth one, but the first 5, oh yeah, I do remember the sixth one. All 6 were open, and he had some wide open looks in the corner, and it was just one of those days for him where he just wasn't knocking it down. And so they needed the three-point shooting to come from elsewhere, and you got one from Sabonis, one from DeRozan. Monk wasn't knocking him down, but Fox going 4 for 8, Keegan going 3 for 8, and Herter hit a big one in the third quarter that we'll get to as well. But the third quarter started pretty similarly to the rest of the game. I mean, the first 3 quarters were all pretty similar. No defense. Monk was attacking the rim, though. Sabonis hitting a 3. Bulls were also knocking down some threes. Even Josh Giddey got in on it to go up 8. Kings respond with Sabonis getting a big offensive rebound, kicking out to Fox for a 3. Monk then got a huge steal. His improved defense continues. That led to a 3, so the Kings then only down by 2. And the substitutions to begin the third were interesting because in the first half, the first sub was Keon in for Fox, and that's normal. Fox coming out early there, Keon coming in. That didn't happen in the third. In the third, the first subs were DeMar and Keegan coming out, which was really weird. And that's weird to me because you're taking Keegan out, you're not putting Keon in. Obviously, Keon comes in for Fox, but still not having one of Keegan or Keon on the court with Levine still out there was an interesting decision. And so you're running this lineup with Fox and Monk as a backcourt, which is just a small backcourt, obviously, and then Herter, Lyles, and Sabonis. That just didn't seem like the best defensive unit that we could have possibly gone with. But Kevin Herter, when he got matched up on Levine, he actually did a pretty good job. I have no doubt he would have gotten blown by if Levine actually ever really just tried to attack him off the dribble, but Levine just tried to put him in the post, and it's similar to what we saw with Jason Tatum. Jason Tatum tried to put Herter in the post, but Herter can stand his ground. He's a tall guy, he's got length, and so he was contesting well, and in Herter's 10 minutes, he definitely made a positive impact. But then you just had Lyles missing open threes, and that's just kind of a situation where it's like, yeah, what can you do there? That's where you do need the defense to step up. And I think the Bulls got back up 8 again. The Kings had a 3-on-1. Keon Ellis with the ball, and Keon tried to throw an oop up to Monk, and it got broken up. And I think that's the third time in a row that Keon, when he's tried to throw an oop to Monk, it's gotten broken up. It was a 3-on-1, and he just throws it up almost right to the defender. He has to work on his decision making and his ability to convert those transition opportunities, because right now it hasn't looked good. And Keegan's another guy that, usually isn't very good in transition, but he did have one moment where he ran the break and he got inside and he drew a foul with a decisive move. So that was good to see from Keegan. But when the Bulls did get back up 8, I believe, which was, I think, their biggest lead of the game, and they got there a couple times in the third, the Kings were, like I said, missing threes, especially from Lyles, and Herter just hit a big corner 3. And I felt like we needed that because we couldn't let the Bulls get too far away there. And so it's just nice to stay attached. And the Kings, just the entire game, stayed attached. Sometimes they were up, but the Bulls were staying attached. Neither team could get away from each other. There was then a period where the Kings didn't allow a field goal for about 3 minutes. They did allow the Bulls to get to the free throw line a few times, so it definitely wasn't lockdown defense. Part of that was them going to a zone, and there definitely were some good aspects of the zone that they went to, but they were just leaving guys open in the corner too much. And so either they were getting some corner threes, 3-point attempts that were open, although they didn't really knock them down, which was good, or they were cutting to the rim from the corners. They also were able to get an offensive rebound from the zone. So, the zone wasn't terrible, but I kind of maintain that the Kings are not the best zone defense team. And that when they go to it, they really have to just go to it in short spurts. And I think that's really true for most teams in the league, other than the Miami Heat. And then Lyles came up pretty big because he was missing from deep. And so what did he do? He just started going to the rim. Well, actually, there was that Devin Carter slipping. He gets it out to Lyles for the midi. And I was like, okay, Lyles hits the midi. Maybe that'll get him going. and it didn't get him going in the way I thought it would. I thought maybe now he could hit a three, but he just started attacking the rim. He converted an and one. I think Devin Carter got an offensive rebound, and then DeMar drove and got it to Lyles. That one might have also been an and one, and then he was just attacking the rim. He missed one, but I think he made two on drives in that late third quarter and then got the drop off pass from DeRozan. So he was just able to attack the rim. Oh no, he only had one and one, and he didn't convert it. My notes were confusing me. I said he drove twice and converted one, then he got an and one. And so Lyles, despite not knocking down his 3-point shots, his drives were huge to keep the Kings right in the game at the end of that third quarter. And then his rebounding was huge. And then the 3-point shooting kind of came around to end that third quarter. You had Keegan hitting a three off a Fox drive, and that had the Kings go up one. Then the Bulls scored to go back up one. And then you had the Fox three to end the quarter off of that Lyles offensive rebound tip out to him. So it was just the Kings kind of grinding to stay in the game in that third quarter, and it was the bench coming up huge. Obviously, Keegan and Fox were the ones hitting the shots there, but it was Lyles getting to the rim and getting rebounds, Devin Carter getting rebounds, Kevin Huerter hitting a big three. So the Kings actually having multiple positive contributions off the bench. I mean, that's just so huge. I think this is their first game fully healthy on the entire season. So having a bench of Trey Lyles, Keon Ellis, Devin Carter, Kevin Huerter, I've already said I think Keon should be starting in this lineup, but with the way that it is right now, I mean, that's a really solid bench. Of course, there's a little that could be added to it, but I think 10 minutes per game for Kevin Huerter, I mean, that's not bad. He came in, made a positive impact. If he struggled, then 10 minutes of a bit of a struggle is fine. And if he was really knocking down his shots, then he can play some more minutes. I feel like that's a good role for him at this point. So the bench keeping us in it, getting us the lead to end the third quarter. And then the Kings stayed in zone for, I think, a couple possessions to start the fourth. And, it was okay. Like, the zone in defense in this game was okay. But I liked when they came out of it. I think it was, a short stint and then get out of it, go back to man. Because obviously you were getting scorched in man. So I totally get why they switched it up and went to zone, make some other guys beat you with some corner threes. You had Patrick Williams missing one. And to start the fourth, the teams kind of just went back and forth. DeMar hitting a midi, Fox hitting a three, Jalen Smith hitting a three. I predicted before this game, Jalen Smith would go 4 for 5 from three. He went 1 for 4. That's good. I'm glad I was wrong. He did have some nice drives, but also missed at the rim a few times. I think overall Jalen Smith made a good impact. I feel like he always does whenever I watch him play. Then Domas came back in, had a couple of finishes inside, or he got to the line on one. DeMar started to hit some clutch shots, hit a clutch three and another jumper. But then you had just Zach LaVine responding on the other end with even more clutch shots. And, his shot making, I mean, there were just some tough shots, like I can nitpick Keon not stepping up in transition on one and he pulls a three, but man, that's just a tough shot. But the Kings 3-point shooting, it got going in the second half as a whole, but really that fourth quarter, like I said, DeMar hit a three, but also Keon hit a three. And that's kind of like what we talked about earlier in the season. They shot 33% from three, but with this team, you just need to be okay from the 3-point line. You don't need to go off every game, even if the other team is going off. Even against the Celtics, they didn't shoot lights out. They shot like 38%. This team is not built on 3-point shooting. They just need enough. And so they got enough in this game. Keon made a big play to stop Talen Horton-Tucker at the rim. So another miss at the rim for the Bulls. And they got running the other way. Fox got an and one in transition. He didn't convert it, but good aggressiveness from him. Then Keon gets a back tap steal. This guy, I said he had probably a subpar game defensively by his standards, but he's still better than everyone else. And he made the clutch plays, a back tap steal that led to the Fox Monk oop. And DeMar had a great step through that put the Kings up 5 with a little over 3 minutes to go. And that was big because it felt like the first time in forever that the Kings had a 2-possession lead. And I don't think they ever gave up that lead. The Bulls did respond with Zach LaVine getting to the line, but it was a super scrappy defensive possession for the Kings. Guys getting their hands on the ball, rotating, everyone just flying around, but they couldn't secure the rebound, and it resulted in Keon fouling Kings challenge unsuccessfully. But that's the type of defensive possession we weren't seeing earlier in the game. So that was kind of the moment that I was like, yeah, the Kings, they're stepping up defensively here. Zach LaVine did get to the line because he's just insane. He's a cheat code, right? But that was just tough. From a Kings point of view, they did what they could on that defensive possession, and that's all you can ask for there. I thought Zach LaVine might just win this game for them because DeMar got blocked on a three, I think, by Patrick Williams. Maybe not the best shot attempt there from DeMar. Then LaVine comes down, hits a tough shot. Bulls are within one. I'm just like, here we go. Zach LaVine's about to finish this for them. But then Keon played some nice defense, and it was interesting the Kings going with Keon in this closing lineup. It was Fox, Monk, Keon, DeRozan, Sabonis. So no Keegan Murray for a little bit there. But then Keegan did come back in for Keon. So we were going with either Keon or Keegan, which I just hope that they don't always do that, because I think at times you can have Monk on the bench or you can have DeRozan on the bench. This game, we were running a lot of the offense through DeRozan late in the game. We could have been running it through Monk and putting Monk in the pick and roll with Sabonis. And I think that could have been successful for sure. And so it was like an either Keegan or Keon. It'll just be interesting to see how that develops. But DeMar made a nice play. He got doubled, found Fox in the corner open. He attacks the closeout, gets to the line, makes both. Kings go up 3. Kings were clutch from the free throw line in the fourth quarter. Then you had the Kings forcing a miss, but Sabonis somehow didn't come up with the rebound. It's really hard on the broadcast to tell what happened because it seemed like it was just coming right to him and then immediately just like picked up so much speed and went the other direction. So I think like the depth perception on the broadcast, is making it look a little weird, but I think no matter what, Sabonis probably should have had that rebound. Somehow doesn't get it. But then I think it's Fox that made the big play to strip Vucevic and have the ball go out on him. Kings come back down. DeMar misses. Sabonis got the rebound, but then got stripped underneath with like 3 Bulls around him. But the Kings just played some great defense on Zach LaVine. 2 straight possessions, I think it was, that they forced him to miss at the rim. And it was good physical defense, especially Keegan being physical. And sometimes on some of those, maybe you get called for fouls, but a lot of times late in games, they allow a little more physicality, and I think they towed the line, just right. This wasn't DeMar shooting a 3 with his foot on the line. This was DeMar shooting a 3 just behind the line with Keegan's defense. But it definitely wasn't just Keegan. It was other guys coming over to help as well. Then with the Kings up 3, you have Monk going one-on-one against Giddey. I understand why you're trying to attack Giddey. And it almost worked. Like, he got by him, but then he got blocked at the rim or whatever. But I think Malik Monk is such an elite player and has that elite partnership with Sabonis in the pick and roll, that when Monk has the ball, I really think it should be a pick and roll. Honestly, I think the same with Fox most of the time, because I don't really like when Fox just goes one-on-one and tries to attack a guy. I think it results in a lot of turnovers. So with those, with DeMar, there are definitely times you can leave him by himself. With Monk and Fox, I really want them to come and set those screens with Sabonis. Get Sabonis involved. Obviously, he's sitting down there. He can rebound. But if he's rolling to the rim, he can also get an offensive rebound. Like, you have to involve Sabonis at some points as well. Like, I get you want Monk and Fox to cook. They're great players. But if you give them a screen, it's like, okay, if the Bulls are going to blitz you and try to take the ball out of their hands, well, maybe it's going to Sabonis. And that's a good guy for it to go to. Maybe it's going to DeMar. Maybe it's going to the other one of Fox or Monk. And if it's going to, Keon or Keegan for 3, then they can let it fly. So I just want them to utilize Sabonis more in those, clutch situations. But he gets, blocked. But then, of course, you have the 5-second violation on the Bulls after the timeout. Great denial defense by the Kings, especially Monk, who was guarding Giddey on the inbounds, guarding the inbounder. and he denied Levine the ball, helped over, and that's really what forced it. And then, Sabonis goes to the line, hits both, and he also comes down and contests Levine at the rim for a stop. And the Kings made it kind of low stress in those final few possessions because of that 5-second violation. We didn't have to see Levine try to make a crazy contested three that he somehow knocks down. I mean, that's the best kind of defense, the one where they don't even get the ball in bounds, the one where they don't get the shot off. Kings defense down the stretch won them this game. And above 500, finally, going through some individual stat lines. Fox, in his return, played 33 minutes. So the guy who's, at the top of the league when it comes to minutes per game, minutes played, all that, played only 33 minutes compared to all the other starters who were 36, 37, 38. But he was super efficient. He started out slowly, but ended 9 for 16, 4 for 8 from 3. When he is knocking down those threes, it's huge. And even the one open one that he missed on the wing, which I think was the only open and good 3-point shot attempt that he missed, Sabonis just gets the rebound. I think it was Sabonis, and kicks it back out to him. Or kicks it back out to Monk, who swings it to Fox, and he hits the three on the second attempt. But super efficient, 26 points, 9 rebounds, 3 assists, only the 2 turnovers, made some clutch defensive plays. Didn't get credit for a steal on that knockaway from Vooch. But definitely a solid return for Fox to the lineup. Monk, 37 minutes, 7 for 18 from the field, 1 for 7 from 3. Thought he took some bad shot attempts from 3. Also had some pretty crazy attempts at the rim where he was just kind of throwing it up. But when he wasn't doing that, he was very good. 6 for 11 from 2-point range, utilizing those Sabonis screens. He was flirting with the triple-double here. 18 points, 9 assists, only 1 turnover, and then the 8 rebounds, 2 steals. He's just been playing lights out. Even before Fox went out, he was playing lights out, but then Fox goes out, he steps up, and it wasn't the most efficient as the lead guard, but it didn't need to be, and he stepped up defensively. Also, when you look at his assist numbers, that in that brutal loss to Detroit, where Fox fouled the 3-point shooter, Malik Monk had 0 assists, and even the game before that, he had 1 assist. So in the Kings' darkest days, he combined for 1 assist over 2 games. And I remember saying, this isn't Monk. Since then, 7 assists, 6 assists, 6 assists, 6 assists, 12 assists, 6, 8, 9. A lot of those with Fox still in the lineup. Only 3 of those, including the 12 assist one, with Fox out of the lineup. So he's just back to being a very good facilitator and not turning the ball over in this game. DeMar, 37 minutes, 9 for 20 from the field, 21 points, 3 assists, only 1 turnover. He was just big late by drawing attention. The Bulls were throwing doubles at him. He hit some big shots. Also had some big takes inside, and he was utilizing some Sabonis screens, but he also had that step through late. And, I love when DeRozan is getting inside because we know what he can do in the mid-range, but so does everyone else. And so if he can exploit that and get to the rim, that's huge. Keegan went 5 for 12 from the field, 3 for 8 from 3. So he continues his hot shooting and ended with 14 points and 5 rebounds, steal, a block. Also was good on Levine late. And, no one will ever know for sure exactly what goes into Keegan's struggles from 3 and now rebounding. But there are, a few possibilities. One, he's always been a slow starter in his past 2 seasons, obviously this one, but this was his slowest start. So is it just he's a slow starter, he didn't have his confidence? But then the other one is you're playing Keon more, you're playing Devin Carter more. So that even though Keon only played 20 minutes, you have Devin Carter playing 11 minutes. That's 31 minutes combined of really good guard defenders. So Keegan having to take less of a burden on the defensive end, it's a possibility. But I'm just glad he's back to, attempting 8 and knocking some down. And then you have Sabonis. Ultimate efficiency, 8 for 11 from the field, 1 for 2 from 3, 5 for 6 from the line, 22 points, 16 rebounds, 8 assists. Early on, I think he had 5 assists in the first quarter, and he was just throwing dimes everywhere. The Bulls kind of adjusted to that. I do think Sabonis, he gets most of his assists in the first half usually. I haven't looked at the numbers, but I think it's the truth. I don't know if the third quarter is any different than the first and second. It feels like he gets a lot in the first, and he plays like 10 minutes of the first quarter, so that makes sense. I don't know what the numbers are in the third quarter, but they definitely drop off in the fourth quarter. So it always looks like he's going towards the triple double, but then he just doesn't get as involved in the offense late. And so that's where I wish they would utilize him more in the pick and roll. It doesn't have to be dribble handoff, but in the pick and roll, especially with Monk and Fox. But great game for Sabonis. Then we go to the bench. Keon, 20 minutes, 3 for 5 from the field, and 2 for 4 from 3. Good shooting game for him. Could he have taken even more threes? I think so, but he only played 20 minutes. And so that's, because Fox is back. Kevin Huerter's minutes got reduced, but you have Fox eating 33 of the minutes, and then Devin Carter still playing 11 minutes, and Huerter playing 10 minutes. So I was really interested coming into this game what the minutes would look like. And I just think you could up Keon's minutes a little bit, especially moving him into the starting lineup. Lyles, 0 for 6 from 3 wasn't good, but 3 for 4 otherwise. 6 points and 8 rebounds and a block, and was just crucial to the Kings' success in that third quarter with getting to the rim, playing physical, battling on the glass. Devin Carter, 11 minutes. He's just kind of similar to Trey Lyles in, not as big of a sense, but he was able to drive to the rim and get to the free throw line. He was able to contest a lot of rebounds, pull down some big ones, and battle defensively. There was one play where he's open from 3. He probably should have shot, but then I think that also is a little bit just his slow load and his low release point. Even with a guy closing out really far away, he can get blocked. So that's the one worry with his 3-point shot. Felt like he should have been able to get that off, but maybe he didn't feel confident in getting that off. And I think that's why you see him shoot a lot of deep ones when he was in college. So we'll just keep an eye on that. And then Kevin Huerter coming in, going 3 for 4 from the field and 1 for 1 from the 3-point line. Racking up 4 assists, had some really nice cuts to the basket. Definitely got blown by a few times. He stopped fouling as much, but that's just because now he just lets guys go by him, which I don't know how I feel about that. Like sometimes that's the right move to let a guy by you. Don't foul, let your defenders behind you try to contest. So I feel like it's kind of the right move, but it can look so sad when he does get blown by. But he's been really good defensively when guys are trying to go through his chest and back him down, and he's got a good contest on Levine. So it's definitely a solid 10 minutes from Huerter. The Kings now go to Milwaukee to try to finish off this road trip 3-0. Coming into this road trip, I was like, hopefully they can go 2-1, and I wouldn't have been mad really at a 1-2. And here we are, 2-0. So can we finish it off 3-0? The Bucks are coming off a really bad loss to the Knicks, where they got blown out by 34. I think the Kings are going to go with Keegan on Giannis. But if they do that, then I feel like it makes it more crucial to start Keon Ellis. And I don't think they will, but I think they should, because you have Damian Lillard out there. So I would love to see Keegan on Giannis, Keon on Lillard. And I'm sure we will see that throughout the game. But the team defense, of course, is going to be so important, helping against Giannis and then having very quick rotations, because we are going to get sucked into the paint and there will be some open 3-point shots. And you just have to be able to, give energy and try to run guys off the 3-point line, because you're not going to play perfect defense. I feel like one thing that is always kind of an X factor with the Bucks is Brook Lopez knocking down his threes, because if he's knocking down his deep threes, there's like nothing you can do about it. But I hope we see a lot of Keon. I hope we see a lot of Keegan. Maybe Devin Carter gets a shot on Lillard. I think that's going to be fun. So anyways, that is it for this episode of the Roll Report. I will be back on Tuesday to recap the game against the Bucks. So I will see you guys then. Peace.